If you like storytime vibes, hit subscribe and let's dive in together.
I always thought the moment that destroyed my marriage would come with screaming, betrayal, or some unforgivable act. I never imagined it would start with a room full of laughter, and my wife offering me up like I was something she could loan out for entertainment. That was the night everything inside me cracked. I remember the glow of warm lights as we stepped into Olivia's house that night. Her friends greeted us with the usual mix of hugs, jokes, and half finished glasses of wine. It should have been harmless. It should have been just another weekend gathering. Instead, it became the moment I stopped recognizing the woman I married. Claire, my wife, was electric that evening. Not elegant, not charming, electric. Laughing too loud, clinging too tightly to the attention of people who barely remembered my name. I watched her sparkle in the chaos, pretending not to notice how she seemed to shine brightest when my presence faded into the background. But I told myself it was nothing. Stress, wine, a long week. Then it happened. A quick joke, a careless smirk, a sentence tossed into the air like confetti, but sharp enough to cut me open. Maybe I should lend him to you tonight, she laughed, nudging her friend Riley. He's more useful than he looks. The room erupted with laughter. Mine didn't. Inside me, something recoiled, like my stomach was trying to climb up my throat. Shock first, then disbelief, then a thick, suffocating heat crawling up my neck. I forced a smile because that was easier than letting everyone see the storm surging through my chest. I told myself it was fine. Just a joke, just wine, just Claire being playful. But my lungs felt tight, my vision strangely distant, and every chuckle around the room sounded like someone tapping a hammer against a hairline crack forming in my life. I didn't know it yet, but that crack was about to split everything open. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself not to overreact, but once a crack appears, you can't unsee it. And that night, every word, every movement, every glance only made that crack spread wider. Claire kept laughing, completely unaware that I was watching her with new eyes, eyes that were suddenly sharper, colder, more awake than they had been in years. She leaned into the jokes, feeding them, letting Riley and the others push the line further and further. At one point, Riley grinned at her and said, "If you ever get tired of him, I'll take him. He looks like he'd follow instructions." More laughter exploded. Something inside me twisted violently. I felt it, the nausea creeping up my spine, the faint ringing in my ears. My palms felt damp. The world didn't spin, but it tilted, as if reality itself had shifted a few degrees off center. I wasn't jealous. This wasn't jealousy. It was humiliation. A humiliation wrapped in jokes, disguised as harmless fun. I forced myself to stay still, to keep the mask on. But my jaw tightened. My eyes drifted away from Claire and toward the door. And that was when a strange, icy sense of clarity washed over me. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at me. And Claire, my wife, was letting them. No, she was enjoying it. That realization hit harder than any insult they could have thrown. It scraped something raw inside me, something that had always trusted her, always believed she'd protect me the way I protected her. Then came the moment I knew I couldn't stay. Claire lifted her glass, clinking it against Riley's, and said, "Maybe we should try swapping husbands for a night. I bet he'd behave better for you." The room howled with laughter. I didn't. I stood up, calm, controlled, quiet. My chair barely made a sound, but the silence that followed felt like the entire room had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. Claire blinked at me, confused. "Where are you going?" I just said, "Outside." But in my chest, the words were different. "I'm done being the punchline." And for the first time all night, she looked scared. The cold air hit me the moment I stepped outside. It didn't calm me. It only made the anger more precise. sharper, as if the night itself wanted me to feel every inch of humiliation burning under my skin. I walked toward the edge of the driveway, my hands trembling, not from the cold, but from everything I'd swallowed for far too long. Behind me, the door opened. "Wait, Daniel!" Claire's voice cracked, thin and trembling. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't remorse. It was fear. Fear of losing control of the narrative she had built around us. She hurried toward me, heels clicking against the pavement. "Why did you leave like that? It was just a joke." Everyone knew I didn't mean it. I didn't turn around. "Did you know that?" Silence. A heavy, smothering silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "You're overreacting. You always take things too seriously." That hit harder than her mockery inside, because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a prop, something to tease, something to control, something to display when it suited her, and dismiss when it didn't. I finally turned to face her. For the first time, her smile was gone, her confidence gone. Her eyes darted nervously, looking for a version of me she recognized, but couldn't find any more. "Let's go home," I said, but my voice was not a request. It was a line being drawn, a boundary forming in the cold air. Claire swallowed. "Now? What will I tell everyone?" And there it was. The truth she didn't even try to hide. She cared about appearances more than she cared about me. "Tell them whatever you want," I said. "But I'm leaving." The color drained from her face, and for the first time all night, the power shifted. The car ride home felt like sitting inside a pressure cooker. Every second was a slow turn of the heat. Claire sat stiffly beside me, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. But I didn't say a word. Silence was the one thing she couldn't control. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "Daniel, can you just talk to me? It wasn't that serious. You're making it bigger than..." "Than what, Claire?" I cut in quietly. "Than being humiliated in front of a room full of people? Or being treated like something you can toss around for fun?" She froze. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Genuinely. But instead, she scoffed under her breath. "You're being dramatic." And right there, something in me snapped. Not emotionally, but mentally. A calm, cold shift. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't confused. She was annoyed that I wasn't playing along. I pulled the car over at an empty stretch of road. Claire frowned. "Why are we stopping?" I turned to look at her, and for the first time, she couldn't hide from my eyes. She squirmed, looking out the window, tapping her foot nervously. "Claire," I said softly, "why did Riley joke about taking me? Like she already knew something about us. About me?" Claire's breath hitched. Too fast. Too sharp. A reaction she didn't mean to show. And then her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again. I glanced down instinctively, and the name flashing across the screen made my stomach twist. Riley. 3 unread messages. Is he mad? You didn't tell him, right? Delete this after reading. My heart thudded. My vision sharpened into something razor clear. Claire lunged for the phone, but I caught her wrist mid-air. "Tell me what?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her silence was the confession. The jokes tonight weren't jokes. They were rehearsed. They were covering something. Something she never intended for me to find. And finally, I realized the truth. This wasn't the night our marriage cracked. This was the night I finally saw the fractures that had been there all along. Claire's silence was no longer confusion. It was calculation. Failing. I held her wrist gently but firmly, waiting. Her eyes flicked to the buzzing phone again, panic rising like a tide she could no longer push back. "Tell me," I said quietly. She swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to go that far." "That far?" My voice was steady. Too steady. "So there was a plan." Her shoulders slumped. a tiny collapse of the mask she'd worn all evening. It was just a test, she whispered. Me and Riley, we we talked about how you always take things calmly, how nothing gets to you. She said maybe you needed to loosen up. Maybe you needed a little push. A push, I repeated. The word tasted metallic. So humiliating me was what you came up with? Claire shook her head frantically. No, no. God, Daniel. It wasn't meant to hurt you. We wanted to see what you do. Riley said you were too predictable, too controlled. She wanted to prove it. There it was. Not guilt, not remorse, just justification. So, I said slowly, tonight was entertainment, a performance, and I was the experiment. She flinched. Daniel, please, do you know what the worst part is? I interrupted. I'm not even angry anymore. Her breath caught. That scared her more than yelling ever could. Get in the car, I said. She obeyed instantly. But I didn't drive home. I drove to her sister's house, neutral ground, a place she couldn't twist into another game. When we arrived, she stared at me, trembling. Daniel, please don't do this. Please. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I saw a stranger. This wasn't a mistake, Claire, I said softly. This was who you are, and tonight, you finally showed me. Her lip quivered. I can change. I'll fix it. You can, I said, but not with me. The words didn't come from anger. They came from clarity. I stepped out, opened the passenger door for her, and handed her the phone she tried to hide. Tell Riley, I said. The experiment is over. And with that, I walked away. Not victorious, not broken, but free.